The most he could hope for, he thought, was to have the primitive weapon thud home painfully on the other's armored hide. Perhaps if he were very lucky, he could knock the other from his clawed feet. But that chance which hovers over any battlefield turned in Shann's favor. At just the right moment, the Throg stretched his head up from its usual hunched position, where the carapace extended over his wide shoulders to protect one of the alien's few vulnerable spots, the soft underside of his throat, and the fire-sharpened point of the spear went deep. Throgs were mute, or at least none of them had ever uttered a vocal sound to be reported by Terrans. This one did not cry out, but he staggered forward, forelimbs up, clawed digit pulling at the wooden pin transfixing his throat just under the mandible-equipped jaw, holding his head at an unnatural angle. Without seeming to notice the others of his kind, the Throg came on at a shambling run, straight at Shann as if he could actually see through the dark and had marked down the Terran for personal vengeance. There was something so uncanny about that forward dash that Shann retreated. As his hand groped for the knife at his belt, his boot heel caught in a tangle of weed, and he struggled for balance. The wounded Throg, still pulling at the spear shaft protruding above the swelling barrel of his chest, pounded on. Shann sprawled backward and was caught in the elastic embrace of a bush, so he did not strike the ground. He fought the grip of prickly branches and kicked to gain solid earth under his feet. Then again he heard that piercing wail from the camp, as chilling as it had been the first time. Spurred by that, he won free, but he could not turn his back on the wounded Throg, keeping rather a sidewise retreat. Already the alien had reached the dark beyond the rim of the camp. His progress now was marked by the crashing through low brush. Two of the Throgs back on the firing line started up after their leader. Shann caught a whiff of their odor as the wounded alien advanced with the single-mindedness of a robot. It would be best to head for the river. Tall grass twisted about the Terran's legs as he began to run. In spite of the gloom, he hesitated to cross that open space. At night, Warlock's peculiar vegetation displayed a very alien attribute. 10, 20 varieties of grass, plant, and tree emitted a wan phosphorescence, varying in degree, but affording each an aura of light. And the path before Shann now was dotted by splotches of that radiance, not as brilliant as the chemical-borne flames the attackers had kindled in the camp, but as quick to betray the unwary who passed within their dim circles. And there had never been any reason to believe that Throg powers of sight were less than human. There was perhaps some evidence to the contrary. Shann crouched, charting the clumps ahead for a zigzag course which would take him to at least momentary safety in the riverbed. Perhaps a mile downstream was a transport the Terrans had cobbled together no earlier than this afternoon. A raft Thorvald had professed to believe would support them to the sea which lies some 50 Terran miles to the west. But now he had to cover that mile. The wolverines, Thorvald. There was one lure which might draw the animals on to the rendezvous. Taggi had brought down a deer just before they had left the raft, and instead of allowing both beasts to feast at leisure, Shann had leased a carcass to the shaky platform of wood and brush, putting it out to swing in the current, though still moored to the bank. Wolverines always cached that part of the kill which they did not consume at the first eating, usually burying it. He had hoped that to leave the carcass in such a way would draw both animals back to the raft when they were hungry, and they had not fed particularly well that day. Thorvald? Well, the survey officer had made it very plain during the past 5 days of what Shann had come to look upon as an uneasy partnership that he considered himself far abler to manage in the field. while he had grave doubts of Shan's efficiency in the direction of survival potential. The Terran started along the pattern of retreat he had laid out to the river bed. His heart pounded as he ran, not because of the physical effort he was expending, but because again from the camp had come that blood-freezing howl. A lighter line marked the lip of the cut in which the stream was set, something he had not foreseen. He threw himself down to crawl the last few feet, hugging the earth. That very pale luminescence was easily accounted for by what lay below. Shan licked his lips and tasted the sting of sap smeared on his face during his struggle with the bushes. While the strip of meadow behind him now had been spotted with light plants, the cut below showed an almost solid line of them stringing willow-wise along the water's edge. To go down at this point was simply to spotlight his presence for any Throg on his trail. He could only continue along the upper bank, hoping to finally find an end to the growth of luminescent vegetation below. Shan was perhaps 5 yards from the point where he had come to the river, when a commotion behind made him freeze and turn his head cautiously. The camp was half hidden, and the fires there must be dying, but a twisting, struggling mass was rolling across the meadow in his general direction. Thorvald fighting off an attack? The wolverines? Shan drew his legs under him, ready to erupt into a counter-offensive. He hesitated between drawing stunner or knife. In his brush with the injured Throg at the wreck, the stunner had had little impression on the enemy, and now he wondered if his blade, though it was super steel at its toughest, could pierce any joint in the armored bodies of the aliens. There was surely a fight in progress. The whole crazily weaving block collapsed and rolled down upon 3 bright light plants. Dull sheen of Throg casing was revealed. No sign of fur or flesh or clothing. 2 of the aliens battling? But why? One of those figures got up stiffly, bent over the huddle still on the ground, and pulled at something. The wooden shaft of Shan's spear was wanly visible, and the form on the ground did not stir as that was jerked loose. The Throg leader dead? Shan hoped so. He slid his knife back into the sheath, tapping the hilt to make sure it was firmly in place, and crawled on. The river, twisting here and there, was a promising pool of dusky shadow ahead. The bank of willow things was coming to an end, and none too soon. For when he glanced back again, he saw another Throg run across the meadow, and he watched them lift their fellow, carrying him back to camp. The Throgs might seem indestructible, but he had put an end to one, aided by luck and a very rough weapon. With that to bolster his self-confidence to a higher notch, Shan dropped by cautious degrees over the bank and down to the water's edge. When his boots splashed into the oily flood, he began to tramp downstream, feeling the pull of the water, first ankle high and then about his calves. This early in the season, they did not have to fear floods, and hereabouts the stream was wide and shallow, save in mid-current at the center point. Twice more he had to skirt patches of light plants. At once a young tree stood bathed in radiance with a pinkish tinge instead of the usual ghostly gray. Within the haze which tinted the drooping branches, flitted small glittering flying things, and the scent of its half-open buds was heavy on the air. Neither pleasant nor unpleasant in Shan's nostrils, merely different. He dared to whistle, a soft call he hoped would carry along the cut between the high banks. But though he paused and listened until it seemed that every cell in his thin body was occupied in that act, he heard no answering call from the wolverines, nor any suggestion that either the animals or Thorvald were headed in the direction of the raft. What was he going to do if none of the others joined him downstream? Thorvald had said not to linger there past daylight, yet Shan knew that unless he actually sighted a Throg patrol splashing after him, He would wait until he made sure of the other's fate. Both Taggi and Togi were